So I watched the entirety of the Ravenswood TV show. I say entirety, it's only like 10 episodes, it's only one season. It was canceled after the one season. And if you were anything like me, I was a Pretty Little Liars stan when I was a teenager, and one thing that I loved was the Hannah and Caleb dynamic. So I was very interested in Ravenswood, and on this rewatch, I could very easily identify where the show fell off and where it went wrong. So I watched the whole thing and made a little PowerPoint presentation for us all to go through the plot and why I feel like the show was canceled. And we're going to go through all of our memories together of being a teenager and wanting desperately to have another Pretty Little Liars show and being completely disappointed. This is my why Ravenswood could have been so good but wasn't presentation for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Strap in. It's 10 episodes long. Each episode is an hour long. Admittedly, there's not a ton of plot going on in these, not a lot of fun discoveries like you get in Pretty Little Liars, so this video shouldn't be too long, but I would love to hear your thoughts down below on the show if you watched it, or Pretty Little Liars, or anything in general. I would love to talk down below, but let's just get right into it. Before we get into the plot, if you don't know, if you haven't watched one of my videos like this before, I do plot summaries. I don't go through every little nuance of every character interaction and all of that. I just do what's going on with the plot. So I do have kind of a summary of the show itself, and then we'll get into the plot. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind about the show. The plot of the first season happens over the span of 2 weeks. Our resident techno boy toy does actually no snooping, which is a big, in my opinion, character flaw with his character in the show. Miranda can conveniently enter any other state the characters may be in and save them, so it really, really lowers the stakes, and you'll see that as we get into it. And the plot really only progresses because of a ghost who can access any of the town's memories. Again, you'll see that when we get into it, but I think those are like the main gripes that I have about the show. Where did the show start? Where did the plot come in? Where did the connection to Pretty Little Liars come in? So it all started in the Pretty Little Liars Season 4 Halloween special, Grave New World. It introduced the town of Ravenswood and served as the backdoor pilot for what would become the Ravenswood TV show. Arya, Emily, Hannah, and Spencer are attending a Halloween party at the Ravenswood Cemetery in hopes of finding Allison, who they believe is still alive at the time. While on the bus to Ravenswood, Caleb meets Miranda, who is there to find out about her birth family. He later runs into her again with the girls in an abandoned mansion with the hidden passageways, and they join up for the hunt for Allison. To wrap up the episode, the Pretty Little Liars storyline diverges into its own thing, but in Ravenswood, Caleb and Miranda find a gravestone with their names and images on it, and at the behest of Hannah, Caleb stays in Ravenswood to help Miranda. The before setup for the show. 2 months prior to the first episode, Olivia and Luke's father was murdered. Remy's father, who runs the local paper, printed an accusation of their mother for the crime. Now, their mother refuses to leave the house, and Luke is struggling with the town's opinion of their family, and Olivia wants to see the best in the town and be a normal teenager again. Remy is struggling with her mother's PTSD symptoms. She just recently came back from Afghanistan and is struggling, and she is in a relationship with Luke that her dad does not approve of. So, these are our main cast of characters, and we'll get into all of our side characters, but all you really need to know off the bat is Caleb, Miranda, Remy, Raymond, Olivia, Luke. Olivia and Luke are brother and sister. Luke is dating Remy, and Miranda is Raymond's niece. Throughout the series, and I don't really get into, each individual time it occurs, there are a lot of supernatural things going on, like angels' eyes bleeding, corpses moving, and weird noises, people peeking out around corners, objects moving, hands moving things, and it kind of contributes to the weird, like, atmospheric feeling surrounding the town. But getting into the plot, basically start the series right off at the end of Grave New World. Miranda and Caleb have just found their pictures and their names on the gravestones, and they decide to follow the address on Miranda's letter that she received about her dead family to where her uncle currently resides. It turns out that her uncle Raymond is actually the funeral director, and when she reveals herself to him, he's very standoffish and acts like they're lying about her true identity, and he also claims that there is no Caleb Rivers headstone in the cemetery. And eavesdropping on their conversation is Miss Carla Grunwald, if you remember her from Pretty Little Liars. Grunwald helps Miranda settle in, and Raymond tries to convince Caleb to leave with Miranda. And Miranda and Caleb oversee 3 people cleaning up a headstone, a mom, a daughter, and a son. So that is the 3 of them, this being their mother. The tombstone was vandalized because the town believes that the death of their father was caused by their mother, and she has been dubbed the Black Widow. Back in the cemetery, Miranda and Caleb's tombstones have completely different names and photos on them, and when Caleb visits the local paper, he meets Remy and her dad to look into old obituaries, and the owner tells him to search the county records for dates and come back. While getting coffee at the local coffee shop, Remy shows Caleb a photo she found of a man that looks just like him. And then at dinner, Miranda starts asking questions about her mother, and Raymond says she had many reasons for running away. If I had her imagination, I might have joined her. He then gives her an album that belonged to her mother, and at the town's homecoming parade, they see Remy entering the newspaper's office and follow her in to question her about the photo she found of Caleb's lookalike. And they clue her into the whole tombstone debacle, and at the same time, during her homecoming parade ride, someone dumps red paint all over Olivia. Dylan, her boyfriend, Caleb, Remy, and Miranda find a news article about the death of their lookalikes who were killed in a boating accident with 3 other people. All of them were seniors at their local high school. Their search efforts get interrupted by a shadow, and we see Raymond watching them from an alley as they leave the paper. Olivia and Luke have a very nice bonding moment, and Luke reveals that he thinks their mother killed their dad. Remy connects that the doppelgangers, the OG Miranda and Caleb, died a week after a veteran returned from war. She wrote a paper. This comes up a lot. She writes a lot of papers. She wrote a paper on the deaths of the 5 teens that were also around the same time that a sole survivor returned to a town like 50 years later. And they all say the same thing that her mom, a sole survivor, said. I don't understand why I'm here. I shouldn't be alive. That night, they pick up Olivia and Luke, who are walking home from the homecoming parade, making the group 5 people. On the town's bridge, Miranda sees a figure in the middle of the road and grabs the wheel, swerving them into the water to try to avoid it. The group wakes up in the hospital, but Miranda is unresponsive, and she ends up dying. Remy tells the group that the road was completely clear and Miranda just grabbed the wheel for no reason. They release her body to Raymond, who claims her foster family has no interest in her, and then Raymond, at the urging of Grunwald, invites Caleb to stay at their house still, with the intention of him working there. Caleb has a dream of him and Miranda back in the car alone, and Miranda tells him to find her bag. She also shows him the figure standing on the bridge. Luke shows Olivia a note she found from their dad to their mom. The note describes a chasm in the relationship needing repair. And Luke reveals their father was alone in his office and their mother couldn't account for her whereabouts. At school, one of Luke's bullies, who is Springer, claims that the town is starting to see their family cracks. The police chief interrogates Caleb and makes it clear that they're going to chalk the whole thing up to a suicide caused by a runaway with a lot of problems. Miss Grunwald serves Raymond dinner, and she's walking away when she says, when you went to that hospital, how many bodies did you expect to find? Caleb and Remy break into the junkyard with a road of passing cars, like, right behind them. But regardless, they retrieve Miranda's bag from Remy's car. And Olivia finds texts and photos of Tess and Springer, her bully, on Tess's phone. At the junkyard, Remy squeezes her way into her car to grab Miranda's bag, but ends up getting stuck. And at the same time, the radio starts playing, and the junkyard's dog escapes the car that they locked him in. We visibly see the door open. Olivia confronts Tess. She says, "Don't be selfish. I got you that crown. Let me enjoy some of the spoils." And Olivia storms off after giving Tess the homecoming crown, and she puts the crown on and smiles at herself in a nearby window. Remy starts sleepwalking again, and Olivia confronts her mom about her struggles with their dad, and she refuses to admit whether they were going to divorce or if there was cheating. And then in Miranda's bag, Caleb finds a letter from Miranda's mom to her, and it invites Miranda's spirit to him to be visible. Her ghost can't leave the house, and when she tries to leave, she sees and hears things. So that's kind of a lot going on in the first 2 episodes, but I think the main gripe that I had with these episodes is that in Pretty Little Liars, and this comes up again and again with this show, and I think is a main point for why this show didn't work. In Pretty Little Liars, there is so much going on. It seems like A is supernatural. It seems like A is this larger-than-life character who always knows exactly what's going on and always is pulling these crazy stunts that we don't know, like, how A knows the things that they know. Are they supernatural? Are they alive? Is it a ghost? What's going on? In this show, and this is the graveyard, or the junkyard was a perfect example, we see the things happening. We see the mysterious, like, the dog's door unlocking and the dog attack. We see opened on screen in front of us. And so even though there is this mystery surrounding Ravenswood, and it really seems to be a lot of ghosts and stuff going on and some creepy stuff going on, the suspense of it being supernatural is lost pretty much immediately. We have a lot of scenes of, like, supernatural things happening early on that are very reminiscent of Pretty Little Liars things that could be kind of swept away or excused away as a person doing this, kind of like in Pretty Little Liars. And this kind of confirms that supernatural things are going on, and it kind of relieves all of the tension of the supernatural things. But the next episode starts off with Miranda's funeral, and at the funeral, Olivia sees a woman standing over her father's grave, and as the casket is being lowered, the crows fly into the sky and start cawing, and Miranda's spirit, who's been following Caleb around, disappears. At the memorial, Caleb gives, like, the least convincing speech about Miranda ever, including, I think she watched movies, and she read books with actual pages. Now, another complaint that I have, and I'm not gonna, like, tear everything apart as I'm going through the plot of this, but another complaint that I have is, like, Caleb and Miranda's relationship doesn't make sense. The entire plot of this happens over a couple of weeks, and they try to add this half-baked romance between Caleb and Miranda towards the end of the show and kind of allude to Caleb and Miranda being soulmates. They didn't really know each other. They had minimal conversations. She pretty much died before they could really get to know each other, and just this speech alone leads me to believe that he knew nothing about her, which makes the relationship later on not very convincing and makes the characters themselves not very convincing. Regardless, we'll get back into the plot. Luke's old cop friend reveals the police were looking into their father's murder after finding out that another woman may have been involved. They ask their mom about Abby, the mysterious woman, and says that she's a dead high school girlfriend of their dad who was trying to warn him that he was in danger. This never comes up again. I do feel like this could have been a very interesting plotline for them to follow, and it could have brought them a lot closer to the mystery in ways that are a little bit more believable than how they find them out later. That's kind of the theme of this show. A lot of plot lines are introduced and then they go nowhere. Raymond offers Caleb the property's carriage house for an undetermined amount of time, and Olivia finds Abby in her parents' yearbook, and she's the woman that she saw standing over her dad's grave. She visits the science lab where Abby died and experiences a moment of the fire, and she sees a spirit with bloody eyes. She tells Luke that she thinks Abby was part of the 5 pattern and is trying to contact them again. The group does a seance to attempt contact with the various spirits hanging around, and nothing really comes of it, but after a disturbance, Caleb chases someone alone, and the group continues the seance without him. Caleb finds Springer just hanging around in the dark on the property, and the seance ends with something telling them that there's a curse on the town, and it has to do with a pact. A chandelier falls on the table, and Miranda saves their lives, and they're now all able to see her. This is a common occurrence, like I mentioned, them getting information randomly from supernatural things happening that they really don't earn in any regard. While taking pictures of the grave in the cemetery, a woman recognizes Caleb and tells him he looks exactly like a Caleb that died years ago. She never met him but saw his photos on Caleb's brother's mantle. Remy finds the address of the man related to Caleb, and they go up to visit him together at a retirement community a couple of towns over. He says his dad disappeared after Caleb died, and they try to question him about the pattern of accidents, and he refuses to answer and has the orderlies take him away. During this episode, there's weird tension between Miranda and Caleb, and she does admit to having feelings for him to Olivia. And while I think the creators thought that this would pair well with Pretty Little Liars and create a love triangle that kept people invested, I felt pretty much nothing for it except irritation. Again, because the characters didn't really feel like real people. Caleb's uncle gives them a necklace of keys that says it's your turn now, and Remy suspects they might be the keys to the school basement where records used to be kept. She conveniently knows this because she wrote a paper on it. Miranda suspects Raymond may have something to do with the sibling's father's death because he has a cabinet full of weapons and articles of the death on his desk. So he lets Olivia in after dark and they explore a storage room. They find jars of hair for every dead child of the town, including Miranda's. Seeing it sends Miranda into a spiral, and she destroys the entire storage room. And then Remy and Caleb find the corresponding room to the key, and it's full of a bunch of old tech. And they find a lockbox, but get locked in before they can get into it. Miranda shows up to the school looking for Caleb and finds her mom. Caleb gets the lockbox open at the end of the episode. Miranda walks through a door filled with light with her mom. The next episode starts with Miranda living in her childhood home with her parents and a strange girl that they found in the yard who doesn't talk, Max. Spoiler alert, as you can tell by this photo, the child is evil and can completely turn her head around. Caleb sees all of this in a dream, and when they open the lockbox, it has maps and photos, including a love letter from the original Caleb and Miranda. And one of the photos matches Miranda's room from Caleb's dream. Caleb's uncle dies, and Raymond claims he was scared to death, and now random spirits start popping up. Caleb tries to visit Miranda's childhood home, but the house has been completely torn down. Throughout these episodes, but particularly in this one, we finally get a Hannah cameo, but the conversation does pretty much nothing for the plot, as their relationship and her presence in the show kind of does altogether. But Dylan helps Olivia figure out that the map from the lockbox is actually a blueprint of a place with a basement. And Caleb visits Miranda in his dream, and they discover a hidden doorway in her closet that leads out of the dream. But Miranda refuses to leave and seems to be getting closer to Max. Raymond is seen trying to unbury someone, and at the same time, Remy sleepwalks herself to the paper and calls the group to help her. Remy claims she felt she was standing in the right place, like she was led there, and it happens to be the same place that they found in the blueprint. They find a closed-off room containing the skeletons of 2 people who close themselves in the room, and at the same time, Raymond and Grunwald are cutting off a lock of someone's hair in a grave. On the bodies, they find the matching rings and photos to what were in the lockbox, and another love letter from Miranda to Caleb. And love letters end up being wedding vows, and they find a marriage license written by a ship captain. The same boat that them and the 3 friends died on a little bit earlier on. And they also find a journal written by their friends who wanted to bring them back to life. knife so Miranda and Caleb could reverse the curse. The group thinks that Miranda and Caleb are the reincarnated spirits of the original Miranda and Caleb, and they're there to break the curse. And they follow a photo of original Miranda's house to an abandoned haunted house. They find Max there, who speaks in a demonic voice and traps them in the house. And they find Miranda there brushing her hair in this completely desolate bedroom. As they're trying to leave, the house tries to kill them, and they exit out of the same closet door that Caleb found in his dream. He's finally able to convince Miranda to leave, and as he's jumping out of the exit, he gets smacked and dies. And while in the in-between with Miranda, Miranda convinces Caleb to go back to the living and says that their time will be right later, sort of implying that once he's dead, they can be together. He's in a coma in the real world. Dylan sees Max in the hospital and follows her into a storage closet where he interrogates her about everyone surviving and says he's going to be very unhappy. We start the next episode with original Miranda and Caleb, and these actors like truly have no chemistry together. It's so awkward to watch them like have romance scenes and stuff. But they find the men of the town meeting to make a pact with a preacher to save their children's lives from the war that's going on. And the preacher is that dude right there, as if his picture isn't creepy enough. He is, in fact, a creepy man. And suddenly, Caleb is awake, and Miranda is stuck back at the house, implying that Raymond cut more hair off of Miranda's dead body. Miranda's mom's journal mentions Abaddon, the angel of the abyss, being the preacher, and the siblings arrive home to Raymond alone in their home, watering a flower he brought their mother. Caleb visits Rosewood off camera for 3 days and comes back having broken up with Hannah, and Miranda and Caleb have a lot of tension, and there's several conversations about why he broke up with her, where there's an allusion to him being in love with her, but it's never like really outright said. Miranda makes contact with Grunwald, and she sort of kind of saves her from this weird attacking ball of like yellow thingies that Miranda and Olivia think might be Grunwald's supernatural guardian. Remy's mom helps her lucid dream using a locket they found in the lockbox, and she's taken back to original Miranda and Caleb's time, but absolutely nothing happens during it except a shadow is seen standing over her. She tries it later again with the group while Olivia is on a date with Dylan. Miranda confronts Grunwald again, and she stops the glowy orbs from attacking Miranda again. Remy starts sleepwalking and leads them to an abandoned house and starts singing a hymn. She's transported back to the same night as the night of the pact, and at the same time, the guys are breaking into the house where they're attacked by a scarecrow creature that seems to be guarding the house. She enters the meeting and finds the men performing the ritual and follows the preacher to a waiting car where he hands someone the contract signed by all the men and a dagger. The side of the car has the name of the funeral home on it, and then the preacher turns into a crow and flies away. The cops end up searching the siblings' house after their gardener finds a blade matching their father's murder weapon buried in the bushes, and Caleb's dad shows up because he got a letter about their uncle's death. The group starts getting threats via strangers, visions, etc., and Miranda tries to make contact with Grindelwald's guardian, who she sees standing over her in the form of a young woman. Caleb's father inherits their uncle's house and plans to stay in Ravenswood. He spends this episode trying to convince him otherwise. This is really just a ploy to like pull him away from the main plot and kill time, kind of like the situations with Hannah. But while that's happening, Remy and Miranda find out that Grunwald's guardian is her mother, who was taken by the curse. They assume Raymond must have a piece of her hair in the house, which keeps Grindelwald working for him. Olivia and Tess are friends again, and Springer and Tess are confirmed part of like the creepy demon shit that's going on. Springer tries to reveal the truth to Olivia, and Tess hits him with her car, and after Remy attacks Luke in her sleep with a knife, her dad takes her to a sleep clinic. The police tell Olivia that her mom's alibi doesn't check out. She tries to visit Springer in the hospital, but his mom scares her away, and Remy's dad tells her that Springer's father is in prison because of her father. Later, she sneaks in and steals his cell phone, which is conveniently unlocked and open to a voice recording of Springer admitting to planting the knife in their bushes. During the sleep study, she's returned to a memory from her childhood of a preacher standing over her with a knife. Raymond visits Springer in the hospital, and as he's walking out, Springer goes into some kind of emergency episode. And in her second dream, Remy is herself, and she's talking to the preacher. He tells her the 5 of them weren't chosen randomly, and it's based on deals made. Miranda is able to bring Remy out of the dream state before she can actually get any answers to any of their questions. And as Olivia returns Springer's phone, he wakes up and says, "Dylan made me do it." Caleb's first day at the high school, and of course we have to take a break from the supernatural drama to meet some mean girls who make fun of Caleb. Price tries to warn Caleb off of Raymond in the cemetery. He says that there's an abandoned chapel that he was asked to take photos of by the Historical Society, but Raymond tried to scare him off. Remy visits Springer in the hospital, and he refuses to help, but she prints a retraction on a piece of Springer's dad, and he offers to help. Miranda and Caleb access the chapel, and it's in complete pristine condition, despite Raymond having said that it was abandoned and in disrepair and dangerous. And while they're searching it, the sun hits the stained glass window and shows 6 names carved into the floor. None of the names match the group's last names, though. It just Dylan. Later, Caleb comes back to the chapel at night, and a spirit with spiders crawling out of her face stalks him. On her walk home, a ghost with bleeding eyes shows Remy to a car where Raymond's yelling at Dylan before they drive off together. Now, we're on to the last episode. Do you feel like nothing has been resolved during this time? Because I sure fucking do. Hannah shows up in town because they have to suck in the Pretty Little Liars viewers, and Caleb tells her the whole truth. Her presence is relatively unrelated to the remainder of the plot. She has a couple of run-ins with ghosts, and it basically just serves to drag Caleb away from the main conflict and drag the episode out while connecting it to the original show. Remy finds the Bleeding Eyes ghost in the paper's archive, and the entire group recognize him as the ghosts that show them all the supernatural events around town. So he's basically a plot device to show them anything that they can't find out on their own. And Olivia, Luke, and Remy go to their father's mayoral office to summon Bleeding Eyes, hoping he'll show them what happened to their dad. They see the night of his death. He's reviewing the articles of the pact when Dylan comes in. He stabs their dad, saying, "I don't want to die," and frames their mom. As he's leaving, he knocks a law book off his desk and leaves bloody footprints on it. Dylan kidnaps Remy from her house. Caleb confronts Raymond, but he doesn't seem to know that Dylan killed the siblings' dad, and he admits he's the keeper of the children of the pact. Everyone who tried to end the pact ended up dead, so Raymond tried to send Miranda away so the curse couldn't continue. Olivia receives a photo from Remy's phone of the window from the chapel. Luke, Olivia, and Caleb go together. They find Remy, and Dylan locks them in. As they're trying to leave, the ghost with the spider face that's been stalking them throughout the episodes shows up and transforms into the preacher. He starts chanting, and Miranda collapses, seemingly bringing her back to life. And Dylan tries to run away and gets killed by Max. Raymond interrupts the ritual by shattering the jar with Caleb's hair in it, and Abaddon disappears. The episode ends with Hannah driving away and Miranda watching them. Original Caleb finds current Miranda, and they flash back to them kissing, and that is the end of the season and the show. That's pretty much it as far as what happens in the show, and if it feels pretty anticlimactic, I agree. That's how I felt watching the show. So what happened to the show? It should have been completely set up for success. It had an original Pretty Little Liars character that everybody loved. It was set in this kind of spooky and atmospheric town with some supernatural twists that really should have set the show up for success. But the show was canceled by ABC Family. Do you guys remember when it was called ABC Family? After season 1 due to low ratings. Pilot received 2.12 million views. However, not even half of those viewers returned for the second episode. And why? I think there's a multitude of reasons, and I think just me recitating the plot could kind of give you an idea of where the show's failings are, but I've kind of broken it down into 5 different reasons. I think the first, and kind of the most obvious, is the complete drastic genre shift from Pretty Little Liars. One of the biggest reasons that Pretty Little Liars works is you have suspenseful real-world drama with occasional thriller elements, a lot of horny characters and romance drama, and Ravenswood introduced ghosts, curses, and paranormal forces, and that's the exact opposite of Pretty Little Liars. Many Pretty Little Liars fans expected a mystery-driven spin-off, not a supernatural horror series, which led to a disconnect with its target audience. And that's key. Your target audience is primed to enjoy a spin-off from Pretty Little Liars, but you did not deliver on what they were expecting. The second biggest flaw is, unlike Pretty Little Liars, which had time to develop its characters and relationships, Ravenswood immediately rushes into the plot, leaving little room for character development. The 5 main protagonists, aside from Caleb, which I say aside, but you get that in Pretty Little Liars, they all lacked, aside from Caleb, the emotional investment from viewers, making it hard for the audience to connect with their struggles. So, Caleb, you obviously had the investment from being in Pretty Little Liars, but I will say, as a Pretty Little Liars stan for a lot of my teenagehood, I loved Caleb for what he brought to the show, not for Caleb himself. He was a bit mysterious, a bit fun, but at the end of the day, he was kind of just a plot device for the girls to figure out these many mysteries, and a little bit of drama later on with the romance and the relationship. But that was like Caleb's whole driving force. It wasn't him as a character. And so him not having a solid character identity and not bringing the traits over from Pretty Little Liars to this show really made it hard to care about the rest of the characters as well in the progression of the plot. I didn't understand his connection to Miranda, aside from promising Hannah that he would take care of her. I didn't understand his pull to this town. He didn't really seem particularly concerned about learning about his family, and he always seemed to be like 1 foot out the door. He only seemed to be in the town for Miranda, and that is not a strong enough pull. And kind of same with the other characters. I didn't really find Remy, Luke, and Olivia's characters to be fleshed out. They didn't really have any interests aside from this curse. All of the information that was found out through them wasn't found out in like cool and interesting ways. It was just them having a past that we knew nothing about, and where they just happened to know the information about this town. And that kind of leads into 4th issue with the show, and that's the confusing and the overcomplicated storylines. I found Ravenwood's plots to be difficult to follow. Unlike Pretty Little Liars, which unraveled its mysteries through clues and investigations, Ravenswood relies heavily on supernatural explanations that are very often vague or confusing. A lot of the twists and thrillery elements were solved by Miranda pulling someone back from this weird state, or a ghost mysteriously giving them the answer with no real effort on our characters' parts. Whereas in Pretty Little Liars, you're following the investigation, and often they don't get answers for episodes and episodes and episodes, and you're getting these little clues at a time that are piecing things together for you, whereas in this show, everything is handed to the characters. And a lot of plot lines that are introduced early on don't fit very well into the story, or they're dropped completely. And then a very minor thing, Pretty Little Liars was already offering all of the things that Ravenswood was claiming that it was offering, the drama and the mystery, and there was really no need to move from Pretty Little Liars to Ravenswood because it wasn't connecting in any way, and it wasn't providing the drama that Pretty Little Liars was. And that brings the bonus, the 6th reason, the bonus reason that I think is the less intellectual reason, and that is there's very little drama with the relationships and the romances in this show. They have a half-baked love triangle between Caleb and Miranda and Hannah, And you have some relationship drama with Luke and Remy and Olivia and Dylan, but mostly there is zero drama between any of the characters in the show. And let's be really honest with ourselves. All horny little 14, 15-year-old girls wanted to watch Pretty Little Liars because you had a bunch of hot people making out and making terrible decisions. And that was part of the fun. Like, sure, we wanted the mystery and the fun, but a lot of that for us was the drama and the intrigue, and this show had nothing. This show truly gave nothing, and that's how I felt watching it now. You know, I'm 28 now. I believe this show came out. So I was 17 at the time, and I was not into the show at all. It just didn't have the drama and the intrigue that I wanted. And I feel that now, 10 years later. I feel that, like, this show really gives nothing. It gives zero drama, zero intrigue. There's no reason to stick around, and especially in a TV landscape where you're watching things on cable and you only have that night to devote your time to that one show. You can't stream it, right? Back in 2013, there really wasn't streaming available to you. And so you had to, like, devote your time to what you wanted to watch and what was most important that night. And frankly, I couldn't see any young person or any person in general devoting their time to the show when they could have been watching so many other things. So I don't think this show would hold up even now, even as a streaming show. I just don't think that this show, like, provided enough. I think they really wanted to work off the backs of devoted Pretty Little Liars fans, but they just didn't have all of the fun elements of Pretty Little Liars involved. So that's the video. That's the entire analysis of Ravenswood. I would love to talk down below on your thoughts on the video, your thoughts on the show, what you thought about Ravenswood, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. All of my social medias are linked down below. Don't forget to subscribe and watch my backlist if you're interested in more content from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.